Please allow me now to hand over the floor to our moderator, Puan Hajjah Zainariah.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Once upon a time, in a land called MyTOWN, there were 4 story makers. They are Bapak Garin Nugroho, Lee Dong-ha, Lee Sang-hoon, and Saville Chan. One day, 23rd of July, 2025, at 4:45, thank you to Joanne, these 4 esteemed gentlemen met up, telling us, finding the right story. So please welcome for our 4 esteemed panel today to be in this hall with us, talking about finding the right story. What is the right story? How do you find the right story? And what is the angle? But quickly before that, I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers today, even though it's been mentioned, but I think you don't know one fun fact about Pak Garin, that apparently he likes to swim in Sungai Kada, because he believes the larva from Merapi that flows into the sungai that produces sulfur gives him beautiful skin. Makanya, if you want beautiful skin, do speak to Pak Jai. Am I right? Yeah? So that's the story for you. So I'm going to go straight into it. My name is Zainariah Johari. I've been in the space for many, many years. Production, post-production, part of a government-linked investment company for the arts, and I love everything there is to love about this space. I believe in its strength and its purpose, and I'm going to go straight to Bapak Garin dahulu, just to introduce. He completed his studies in 1985, Film Academy of Jakarta. His film, Opera Jawa. Can I see a show of hand? Who's seen Opera Jawa here? Yeah, less than 10. Yeah. It's a very deep film. I love it. It's difficult, but it's fantastic. And Opera Jawa was in 2006. Yeah. And again, we know about his skin regime. And next to me, we have Mr. Lee Hong-da, who's known for Train to Busan, that everybody is, I think 1/5 of the Korean population watch your film, some 11 million people in Korea, and later on 156 countries around the world watches Train to Busan. It's really quite a feat. Congratulations. And of course, I was teaching Lee Sang-hoon how to use Haya Alama earlier on today, just to be very Malaysian. So we also have him in the house with his debut movie, Birth of the Man, and also Mud Boy, Love of South and North, The Arts of Fighting, and Barefoot Jibong. And at our very, very left, and Saville Chan, not from the raw bubbles of Saville in Spain where they make the best suit, but Saville is actually a multifaceted figure in Hong Kong, film and cultural landscape, a graduate in anthropology from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. His collaborative work with director Adam Wong has become hallmark of his career. He's also a very decorated film producer and also an academician. Yeah. So I'm going to go straight to Bapak Garin dahulu, ya Pak. Yeah, for first question. So just a simple first question, what really makes a good story? What is it? Like, do you have to suffer a certain death dahulu sebelum the story becomes, like you have to die first, then the story becomes great? How do you know when your story is ready to be told?
Yeah. Until now, I'm still didn't have courage yet to answer this question because it's so complex yet to answer. But to be honest, every time I have an idea, that I understand that life is like the ecosystem, for example, a garden in Indonesia, in Korea, or in Hong Kong is totally different. And a good story, if you have an idea that become part of your ecosystem in your country or in the world, and you sure that this idea is develop the ecosystem itself. And you also trust that every single thing in the world, every single thing, even the stone, even the leaf, have function, have the market, every single thing. That you say that I love this idea, then this is part of our ecosystem. If the idea is rare idea or unique idea, not popular idea, just believe that in the ecosystem, every single thing have the market, have the function. That if your idea is difficult idea, just do it. Because you as humanity is part of the ecosystem. Everything is always function and have the market. Yeah. This is what the good story is. You must be sure the idea is part of the ecosystem. Then every idea always have the what you call market or function, but also like every plant or plant seed like that, they have the way to get the water if the ecosystem is very good. If mean every idea have the way to get the funding. And I always trust that. And the idea is about authenticity. Because our thumbs, garis itu apa? The line of our thumb between person is different. We have born in the different thing, but we complementary each other, and we develop the ecosystem together for the complementary. It means the good idea is also about authenticity, that everyone is totally different. This is my answer. And the idea will be developed like a plant. They're looking for the water, they're looking for the sun, but the end is what you call love and survival. The good idea must be bring love and survival. Because our successful thing is not about become someone the best one in the world, no. Because we are survival. And filmmaking and love the idea is about survival to make the idea survival. And this is the answer, maybe not the right answer, but I try to answer our authenticity, part of our ecosystem, and we complementary and develop ecosystem in our society.
Well, that's a loaded answer, very deep. Makanya, yeah, very, very deep. And I wanted to quote something from Opera Jawa. It says, cleverness becomes power, praise becomes threat, disappointment becomes anger, and strength becomes force. It's all deep, and you talk about merasai, to feel it, right? And everything has a life of its own. If you think there's no wrong or right answer, I think in this space, yeah. And I'd like to ask our next panel. I mean, if you want to add on to that, I mean, what makes a good story? And also, as an addition, I mean, when you did Train to Busan, right? That's the most famous talked about until today. What is it that inspired to kind of why is that? Why Train to Busan? And because after that, it's got continuation, and you multiple your product.
I'm sorry, I need a great translator. So, 부산행은 지금 옆에 지금 게린 그 감독님이 얘기해 주신 거랑 좀 비슷한 사례가 될 수 있을 것 같은데요. 그 처음에 그 연상호 감독이 어느 날 아침에 저한테 전화가 와서 아버지와 아들이 KTX를 타고 부산을 가는데 거기에 감염된 학생 한 명이 타는 이야기 재밌을 것 같아요 라고 물어봤어요.
His answer will be same as one of the directors of Busan Hang. One morning, the director actually called him, and then the director was telling him that he was taking the KTX, one of the fast trains in Korea, to Busan, and then he saw a kid, and then some stories happened over there.
네, 거기서부터 되게 재밌을 것 같은데 이게 이야기가 만들어지는지 아닌지 우리가 한번 그 진짜 시나리오를 썼던 작가를 불러서 셋이서 한번 이야기를 만들어 볼까라고 이제 제안을 했죠.
So after he saw the kids in the KTX, he thought that it was an interesting story, and then from there he started writing the scenario and started proposing.
네, 그래서 그 시나리오를 썼던 작가와 연상호 감독과 제가 계속 매일같이 모여서 이 이야기를 이제 만들어가기 시작합니다.
And so after they started writing the scenarios, they started gathering with the directors, and then that's how the story started.
중요한 거는 KTX를 타고 부산까지 가는데 저희가 초반에 결정한 거는 연상호 감독이 결정한 거는 마지막 엔딩에 모든 사람들이 다 좀비로 변하고 아이만 살아남는다라는 설정이었어요.
So the important thing here is when they're writing the scenario is when everyone writes the KTX, the decision made for the scenario is everyone will die and only the kid will stay left alive.
예, 거기서 우리는 각각의 역을 설정하고 그 역을 가는 데까지 시간을 정하고 그리고 어떤 인간 군상들이 그 안에 다 들어가 있어야 될지를 정하고 그 다음부터는 디테일들을 써내려가기 시작했죠.
So from there, we've decided to set the roles of the character, and then also from there we started detailing all the stories and the characters from there.
네, 저희가 맨 처음에 했던 작업 중에 하나 첫 번째는 뭐냐면 맨 마지막에 결국에 아이 혼자 살아남는데 아빠가 아이한테 어떤 대사를 해야 될까 그거를 오히려 저희는 초반에 좀 설정을 했어요.
Okay, so for one of the first production, and then the thoughts that we're thinking about is when the last kid stays alive, what would the last man and the last sentence that would the kid say to his father or parent? Yeah.
네, 그래서 어쨌든 우리는 그 이야기를 거의 한 2달 만에 시나리오 초고가 나왔고 그 시나리오 초고를 본 투자사는 이 3명은 천재가 아니야라는 맨 처음 리액션이 있다가 이야기를 끝까지 보더니 아 천재는 아니구나라고 생각했다고 하더라고요.
Yeah, so after writing the scenario for 2 months, we thought that wow, this was a genius idea, but after that, actually, it's not actually a really genius idea. Yeah.
네, 제가 드리고 싶은 얘기는 뭐냐면 이런 얘기들을 자주 듣는데 한국 컨텐츠들 예를 들어서 폭삭 소가수다, 그다음에 뭐 기생충, 그다음에 저희 뭐 부산에 이런 영화들이 어떤 해외를 오징어 게임도 시리즈 1도 마찬가지고요. 해외를 공략하겠다고 쓴 시나리오거나 대본들이 아니었습니다.
So what I want to say here is, a lot of these Korean contents like Parasite or Squid Game 1 or 2, there was no clear intention of like we want to target the global market initially.
그러니까 넷플릭스 글로벌 OTT에 들어가면 당연히 좀 해외 분들이 많이 보겠다라는 생각은 하지만 그리고 한국 영화는 특성상 그 수익의 90%가 다 그 한국 극장에서 나옵니다.
So if you have your production under Netflix Global, obviously it will go global. But most of the Korean movie will be hit into Korean local cinemas only.
90%.
90% of Korean cinema.
You no need a translator. Yeah.
그래서 한국 관객들을 만족시키지 못하는 이야기를 만들거나 그 작품을 쓰거나 아니면 만들지 못하면 해외는 언감생심 저희가 꿈을 꾸기도 어려워요. 일단은 한국 관객들을 만족시키는 작품에 모두가 몰두합니다.
So that's what he mentioned, 90% will go to Korean watchers and Korean cinema. So it's very important to satisfy the Korean watchers first instead. So if you cannot even satisfy your Korean watcher, it's very hard for you to even dream about having a good movie.
Thank you. Wow. Do you notice for me, the stark cultural difference, if I can call it difference? From Bapak Garin, it's like, this is a man who takes bath from the lava of the volcano, right? So from Bapak Garin, it's nature. It's like, do you feel it? Do I feel as I feel? And then we move on to the next. Our guest, it's very structural and very Korean, if I must say so myself. It's very somehow somewhat formulated. The approach of answering the question is different. So I think I see a cultural difference there, which again, there's no right and wrong. But the most, my most sentence that I remember is, you have to be successful in your country first, then you will, only then do you take it out. So kind of different where I come from, we have to prove ourselves external. I will not be embarrassed to say it. You have to prove yourself external dahulu, only then are you, And just quickly, I made a trip to Iran a month ago before the bombing starts to judge a film festival, and it's exactly that. So everything that they do is about them. So thank you very much. I do appreciate the start of our question, more questions to come. And we have two Lees from Korea today. It's like a pop group, right? Presenting Lee Hong-da, and it's like a pop group. So very privileged. And Lee Sang-hoon. So so if you're not a Lee, you're not invited. You have to be a Lee. So happily we accept the two Lees, right? Okay. So my question to you: you've moved from your acting, you're also directing, two different way of telling a story. So how do you do that two role, right? You tell people and people tell you what to do, and how is that different from an actor, from receiving orders to giving orders? Also, if I could add, from telling the stories of someone else to telling your story.
I'm idol, idol recognition, And I'm first and hi, apa kabang, okay. And I'm and double sorry because I need a translator. I'm sorry. 배우를 할 때랑 감독을 할 때 일단 공통점이 있어요. 공통점은 뭐냐면 소통과 공감이라는 하나의 이 중요한 요소들을 꼭 갖고 있어야 되는데 일단 배우는 일단은 상대 배우와의 소통, 그리고 본인 자신의 캐릭터와의 소통이 필요해요. 그 소통을 통해서 이제 연기가 만들어지고 그게 관객들에게 공감을 느끼게 하거든요. 이게 필요하고 감독은 여기까지. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Okay, so he did mention that there are similarities in between being an actor and also being a producer or a director. So in between, the similarities are communicating and also empathy. So the first part for if you're an actor, I think it's very important to be able to communicate with yourself, and that's how you can act your way out. And for being a director, 감독님은?
And I'm sorry, I'm real. 감독은 똑같이 역시나 소통과 공감이 필요한데 감독은 사실은 더 많은 소통과 더 많은 공감이 필요합니다. 왜냐하면 감독은 일단 배우랑의 소통이 필요하고 또 많은 스태프들과 뭐 카메라맨, 의상팀, 메이크업팀 그들과 다 소통을 하고 가장 중요한 건 시나리오에 대한 이야기에 대한 소통들이 필요하거든요. 직접적으로 내가 쓴 시나리오일 수도 있고 때론 작가가 쓴 시나리오일 수 있는데 그 소통에 대한 것들이 생기면 그것들이 완벽해지면 보다 많은 관객들이 공감을 하게 되는 겁니다.
Yeah, so he did mention that if being a director, there's more communicating and empathy required, especially when you're communicating with your actors, actress, your staff, your makeup artists, your wardrobe people, and also your writer. So he did emphasize on, especially when you're communicating on your scenario, that's a very important part of as a director. because it doesn't matter whether you're writing the script or maybe a writer is writing a script. The communication part is very important.
그리고 배우와 감독으로서 다른 점은 뭐냐면 일단 배우는 일하는 시간에 비해서 돈을 많이 벌고요. 감독은 일하는 시간은 많은데 돈은 그보다 적게 법니다.
So one difference between an actor and a director is the amount of time work for actor, they earn a lot more than a director. So the director doesn't earn that much compared to actor. Yeah.
그런데 사실 더 가장 중요한 다른 점은 일단 제가 배우를 할 때는 이 캐릭터에 대한 내면적인 고민들을 매우 많이 합니다. 이 캐릭터가 얼마나 관객들이 느낄 때 공감할 수 있고 정말 현실감을 느낄 수 있는지에 대한 캐릭터 자체에 대한 고민을 많이 한다면
So one important differences between being an actor and a director is when I'm being an actor, I try to think about my inner personality and then to see whether my audience can empathize on my inner personality when I try to act.
감독은 내면적인 고민은 당연히 해야 되고 외부적인 또 고민을 많이 해야 됩니다. 일단 또 인베스트에 대한 스트레스 그리고 스케줄에 대한 스트레스 이런 전반적인 어쨌든 이야기를 만들어가는 전체적인 컨트롤을 타고 오기 때문에 모든 곳에 대해서 다 그들과 소통을 해야 되고 그들에게 내가 바라는 요구 사항들을 이해시켜야 됩니다.
Yeah. So as a director, there is a different problem that he has to think about. Obviously, they have inner problems, same as actor as well, but there are also external problems they have to think about, like investor, the stress of an investor, the stress of like working with other staff as well. So the communication part is really important here.
그래서 항상 그게 고민입니다. 왜 배우는 저렇게 짧게 고민만 하고 나는 많이 고민하는데 돈은 이렇게 적게 주는가?
So that's why he always think about why the actors can earn more than him, but himself he has to think more than the actor, but he's getting lesser money. Yeah.
Anyway, and the actor and director and also very important is in the communication is in the feeling. I'm so many and writing very important and the messages and the communication is and so many idea thinking every time is and the focusing is and connecting. Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Anyway, and very important. Yeah. I'm answered. Yeah. Finish. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a very soulful director, very methodological director, actor turned director, now regretting it somehow. But you can go back to acting, you know. You can. Yeah, for sure. I'll go see your film, and of course. Yeah, bisa. Okay. We'll sign backstage, okay? And I mean, Saville, I met him just outside before. I had maybe at least half an hour, 40 minutes with the Lee rock group, with the Lee, a friend from Korea. But Saville, I met outside, and I thought I was the only nervous wreck. I've done this several times, but he's like, you got to help me out, because I get nervous. So if you're nervous...
I'm very nervous.
He's very nervous, so be kind, right? But anyway, so he's more of... I would talk to him about his music work, which is more than, because what is a film without the scores and good song and soundtrack that will become memorable and earworm and will last the test of time. And you started as a lyricist, really, before stepping into film production. Why, if you could, enlighten me and the rest of the crowd, what is the, in finding the right story, they also have to be the right song. It has to accompany that, perhaps. How did the right song help shape the right story in your experience?
It's a very difficult question for me, because I have been lyricist for 25 years, okay? But already in the film industry, over 10 years already. I can say it's very different from the lyric writing and the filmmaking, because it's it's much more easier for lyrics to write a song. I just sit in front of my computer, listening to the song, listening to the demo, write down the melody, write down the notes, and fill in words and sentence to make a song. Okay, this is very different to make a movie, especially where the movie idea comes from. I very agree. This is my first time I heard about we can think it this way, to put your idea inside the ecology in a society. It's a very brand new idea. I'm very excited to listen to this new idea. I have to think about it. Okay, but to me, I think a filmmaker is like an architect. Okay, it's an architect. You know, you can have all those crazy idea how to build up the strange outlook building, but you have to tackle many realistic problems. Okay, just like we making films, we can all have all the right thoughts, all the right idea before we truly write your story to make a movie. But during the process, because it's a very long journey and long struggle to finish a movie, we have to do it practically, just like an architect. Okay. One more idea. For example, my second movie is just 10 years ago. It's released 10 years ago, 2050. The name is called She Remembers, He Forgets. Okay, the story is about three secondary friends and their miserable present. Okay, where the story come from? It just come from one observation in Hong Kong society. Because I find many people, just like me or just like some middle-aged or old people, they always think about the old good days. Okay, from the oldest 80s to 90s good days, we are rich. We have many good economy. We make good films. We make all the good music. We have many superstar both on the musically singers and also the actors, also the directors. They always think the past day was good. Okay, I just wonder, is it really good? So I put the idea inside the movie in a love triangle story. In love story, the protagonist of the female character, she has a bad life, a not so good life with a present husband. So she remember going back to the school days. Oh, there's another boy chasing me. There's about ruining me. Why? They remember why I chose this present husband, which is very miserable now, instead of that good boy. Why? So we go back to the memory. So I can say that our idea can come from nowhere, can come from funny places. But when it put in reality, we have to do it very briefly. We have to do it very in details.
Thank you. You did well for a nervous man. But I know she remembers, he forgets. Well, the girl always remember, and the man, oh my God, they're terrible, like birthday tak ingat, no, anniversary what, like. So anyway, I know the story is about choosing. It's about regret. Do you regret what you did or who you chose? But again, what the point is, you can pick. Are we saying that we can pick anything to make a good story from a rock, just a rock or humanity?
Yes, and another thing, we have to do it. We have connected with real life, I guess, because sometimes I talk with my students. They come from ideas maybe from some Japanese comic books or come from other movies. But there's one director I admire very much, a Taiwanese director, Hou Xiaoxian director. He once said, never find your idea from another movie. Find your idea from real life. Okay, I can amend in such a way. You can get your idea from everything. anything, from another movie, from a comic book, from whatever you like. But put it into real life shooting, real details. You have go to the real life, because all thing is about human beings. I always cite in a Hollywood popcorn movie, which is last few years ago. It's called Free Guy. Free Guy is about a movie, a guy suddenly accidentally go into the gaming world to go on. The idea is wild, because the idea is a good idea for the youngster are already very into the gaming. But you see the protagonist, you see the world, you see the difficulty he's facing inside the story. All is about reality. So again, another point is the reality is still an important way to make a good story.
Right, so don't copy stories of others and make it your own. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So just before, one of the conversation we had prior to doing this session was what's happening around the world. And we were talking about humanity. And if I think politicians should be maybe artists, then we'll have a better world, perhaps. So everybody's like, it's a good world. And then I was just speaking to our Mr. Lee about Train to Busan. For me, my takeaway is either you kill or you be killed eventually at the end, if I were to sum that film. So if I could ask you, in terms of the culture that you were trying to, or the message that you're trying to emphasize in that story to tell your audiences in finding that story, could you maybe share what is it that there are many fractions, right? You can even close your door to your own relatives, right? If you could maybe share with us what was the inspiration. And zombie wasn't so sexy until Train of Busan came. I think zombies always, I think my little knowledge, people kind of laughed about it until Train to Busan came up. So what is it culturally or, spiritually or conceptually gave you that story you must tell in that analogy?
그 부산행을 보신 분들은 아실 수 있는데 크게 보면 두 가지가 기대를 했고 그리고 좀 주요했다라고 보는데, 하나는 그 안에 드라마입니다. 인물들과 드라마. 그러니까 인물들의 군상들이 내가 가장 아끼는 가족이거나 사랑하는 사람이거나 아니면 동료거나 아니면 이해관계가 없는데 좀 각자의 이유로 탄 사람들, 이렇게 이 사람들이 일단은 기차에 타죠. 그게 하나이고, 다른 하나는 진짜 리얼 속도로 달려가고 있는 고속 열차입니다.
So there were two things to expect when he was on the movie. One thing is the dramatization of the characters. So there were a lot of relationships about someone that you love, someone that you work together with, or someone that's next to you closely. So that's the first thing, the dramatization of character. And the second thing is the fast train, the fast speed train that they are in. So that actually adds into the elements that the moderator asked just now.
이야기의 구조상 좀비라는 장르를 가지고 왔지만 우리가 실시간 체험 공간에 들어가 있고 속도감은 점점 긴장감을 더하고, 그 안에 인간 군상들은 각자의 이유 때문에 본인들이 할 수밖에 없는 선택들을 하게 되어 있기 때문에 이게 드라마적으로도 되게 우리가 원하는 그런 감정들을 잘 끌어올 수 있었고, 이야기적으로도 서스펜스가 끝까지 살아남을 수 있었다는 게 주요했던 것 같습니다.
So in the movie, there's also a lot of nervousness where it tries to make you very nervous, and also based on a lot of characters, different reasons, and also selections of decisions that they make, that adds to the suspense of the movie.
이게 장르적으로만 만약에 해외 소개됐으면 그게 이제 그 관객들이 좋아하는 범위가 좀 작았을 텐데, 거기에 나오는 그 드라마에서 등장하는 인물들의 전 세계 여러분들이 공감할 수 있는 인간적인 좀 감정의 보편성이 있었기 때문에 좀 좀 전 세계적으로 크게 좋아해 주신 것 같습니다.
So the dramatization of characters had a lot of traits where it's universal, and that also lead to many of global watchers that actually related to the characters in the movie.
Thank you. So again, what I could, in my mind, I'm not sure in the audience's mind as well, I think commercialization is huge when Train to Busan is being coined and the birth of. So actually, Bapak Garin, aside from a filmmaker, he also studied law, am I right? Yeah? Jadi you are a legal eagle to an extent. So in terms of selecting your story, so I only refer to Opera Jawa. And in his free time, get this guys, in his free time, he will direct documentaries and short films. I think if I were to be a filmmaker, that's my career. Like I'm a documentary, but Bapak Garin I do long form, and in my free time I do short film, and it's such a full life yang agak penuh gitu. So when being somebody in the legal field, producing something like Opera Jawa and your story, it's very rooted and embedded in culture, whereas our other friend is very commercial. How do you, when you decide, I guess, what is the balance between commercialization and telling your message, which is mana yang lebih penting? Is it I guess both, but how do you draw the line?
Yeah, I think the good idea or good stories must be, if you try to discover a good story or a good idea, you can describe your idea. Describe is in two aspects, the management aspect and the creativity aspect. And to analysis, this is the process of creativity. The process creativity is discovery, the idea and the story, but also describe the management perspective and the creative perspective. And then day by day you analyze something wrong and you make the value, added value. You try to kill every time your idea until this idea cannot dead. It is in between madness and analysis. It's been analyzable madness. This is the creativity. The second thing, I try to make simple. If I have an idea, then I try to describe in several perspectives. One, if the idea about the social perspective and will be rejected by the industry, then I looking money or funding for the sources that have the money to support my idea, for like NGO, for example, non-government organization, for example. But if I make the Opera Jawa is more quote by quote, more the aesthetic of performance art, for example, then I will looking for a funding that, for example, for the venue funding, artistic funding, for example, like Samsara. Because Samsara is silent movie with the orchestra or with the concert, then I'm looking funding for one is from the many venue like Esplanade, give me the money, like the Holland Festival, the venue of performance art, give me the money, but also from the cinema, my producer cinema. When my producer Garin, can we collaboration together? This is my student partner. And I say, I am boring if the funding is from Netflix like that. We must be looking for the new map funding. If you didn't want to do that, don't collaboration with me. And she answered, it's very difficult. Yes, life is difficult. Making film is difficult. Ya kan? And then Samsara, for example, get several funding. Even like you can ask to Australia, for example, the archive, yeah, because they also have the funding for silent movie. And now M+, for example, now Samsara screening in M+ in Hong Kong as a cine concert, but in Australia screening in Melbourne as a film. Opera Jawa from film become the theater in Holland Festival, in Germany, in Esplanade, and then the last one become installation art in Louis Vuitton in Paris. It's mean if you have an idea, you must also have capacity to describe. The management aspect, not only management about how to make a film, but how you know about your market. You have the social market. For example, my last film, Whispers on the, I forget the title in English, but this film is from the institution of anti-corruption. Then I make a good film. Then this film in, for example, in Rotterdam Film Festival, and screening in many areas in Indonesia as the program of anti-corruption. And also will screening in many areas in Indonesia. Then I know this idea, I describe as management perspective, I get money. But the reward for the money is the social market. But like Samsara, Opera Jawa, the money from many venues, it's mean expanded must be 2,000 people like that. Because the expect is the maximum audience is only 2,000 people like that, you know. And in Australia is also like the in Majestic Theatre, you know. It's mean my market from the Samsara is the festival, film festival, also in the venue of performance art. This is why I say that about how to balance between idea and the market. The good idea know very well the balance between them. It is, I always say to my student, you must can describe your idea. This is social market, economy market, or political market, or performance art market. Like you know very well. I cannot bring Samsara to the common producer. With collaboration with so many orchestra in the world, 5 orchestra, Berlin Orchestra. But I make networking, my producer several countries, between film producer, performance art producer, and also the association of symphony orchestra in the world. Melbourne, Berlin, Singapore, like that. Yeah, Vienna juga. It's mean if you ask me about the balance between the idea and the market, the good idea is a good balance between them in their special market. Because market, in my opinion, is so differences, have so differences. Market not only in the cinema, but also in many cinema industry. Because my film majority, only 3 film funding by industry, by production house. It means 23 of my film get the funding for many perspective of funding. Institution, NGO, performance art, like even from the gambling. Wow. Yeah, it is funny sometimes because film is suspense and surprise, you know. And looking funding for film is also suspense and surprise. Sometimes we just 6 years we cannot get the funding. But sometimes only 2 days we get the funding. For example, this is one of the lottery, you know lottery? Yeah. Lottery, and the owner of the lottery met with me in the party. Hey Garin, what oh, I make a feature film. No, I didn't want to make a feature film, you know. I want you to make a television because I can get many sponsors. Then my answer, no. Film is gambling. And then with the word of gambling, he looks like I have the spiritual terms. Because he is a gambler, you know. And then, okay, film is gambling, okay, Garin. But I have only money, no. The money will become 3 weeks after we discuss. And you must be finished the film only 4 months after this. This is, you can get so many funding. For example, I get funding from fabrics, big fabric, you know, cement fabric. And then he say, it will be anniversary of 25 years of this fabric. And he asked me to, how Garin do you think to make a film for our anniversary? I say, if you make commercial for the television, you just only 3 months and finito. But if you make feature film with me, then forever. And all your staff and your family can see my film. then every single space and time is the opportunity to get money. But you must be know very well, this idea will be developed. It's like plant or seed, yeah. Where is the sand, that the right sand for the seed or the plant? Because my film majority is very sensitive about the Papua freedom, leader of Papua freedom like that. It's take risks, and you cannot get the money from the common producer. Because I bring 100 flag Papua freedom to Papua, and the head of the military, of course, put me to come to the center of military. Of course, that money you cannot get from the local Indonesia. You must be get from foreign country. But you also must be know all your decision about your idea have a risk, have the management of creativity, but also management how to build this story become the reality like that. For example, when I met the leader of Papua Freedom in the forest, it's funny story because then one of my friend, a pastor, yeah, the leader of Catholic, said, Garin, if you met with him, he is using the blue t-shirt. Yeah, because at that area is not military Indonesia, only Papua Freedom Movement. And then I come there and then this is 5 people with the blue t-shirt. Yeah, blue t-shirt. Yeah, blue. Now. And then my answer, I said to SMS to the pastor, this is 5 person with the blue. And how I know he is the leader. And what is the answer? Just hook and touch your hand. If they are pistol and grenade, he is the leader. And then I must be hooked one by one like that. And with so difficult. And then when okay, Garin, I give you time for our shooting here. Like for example, then every idea have the risks of money, risk of politics, risk of everything. It means a good idea is also capacity to describe and to analysis even the process of creating the story, but also the infrastructure that will be developed, your idea become the film itself.
Wow, I'm very interesting and inspirational, and we can actually, his Bapak's journey in finding the right story is the story itself, isn't it? And in fact, when he mentioned social entrepreneur, now it gives me idea to you can make filmmaking into a social entrepreneur business.
Yeah. Film can business entrepreneurship, but
Yeah.
also can social entrepreneurship, but also artistic entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Maka kombinasinya banyak in
Ya, banyak.
dalam case Bapak, because this is what happened when a legal eagle becomes a film director, yeah, and you're networking sampai ke Papua, and it's quite my first time. Thank you very much for that. How are we for time? Are we okay for time? Sorry? Oh, Q&A. Yes. Baik. So I would like 5 minutes more. Oh yeah, terima kasih. So can you imagine Mr. Lee, Lee part 2. Yeah. So this is really amazing. Like when I hear Bapak Garin's, it opens up a whole world of something else for me. Yeah. And how do you think in a very commercial, I always think of Korea content, which is really wonderful, very, very commercial centric, right? And is there any any room to be more political in the kind of story you tell, or more expressive than the commercial of what we know Korean content is about? Yeah.
A very high level and the question. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. 사실은 항상 그 밸런스를 맞추는 게 제일 힘든 거고, 어느 한쪽으로 지극히 감독의 개인적인 성향이 쏠리게 되면 그게 반대되는 또 의견들에 대한 것들의 문제에 부딪히기 때문에 항상 저도 제가 하고 싶은 얘기와 관객들이 대중들이 원하는 이야기가 무엇인지에 대해서 주변에 리서치를 많이 합니다.
So finding the balance is really hard, and then also putting his personal thoughts into directing also will also bring a lot of like people would disagree. So that's why he will do a lot of research on what I want to say and what people want to see at the same time. So he will focus a lot on researching that.
물론 가장 중요한 리서치는 투자자들이죠.
So the most important research is researching for rich people.
그래서 저의 생각을 설득시키기 위해서 일단 제 스스로에게 많이 질문합니다. 내가 제 개인적이 아니라 내가 다른 상대방이라고 생각하고 인베스터라고 생각하고 예를 들면 그 사람이라면 나의 생각들을 어떻게 받아들일까를 나의 기준이 아닌 상대방의 기준으로 생각을 많이 하고 그 생각들을 갖고 그들을 이해시키고 그들의 이해가 된다면 이제 제 이야기가 만들어질 수 있겠구나, 가능성이 있겠구나를 확신을 가지고 스토리를 쓰게 됩니다.
Okay, so he also thinks about how to convince other people in the process as well. So he will try to think personally as the investor themselves and think how would the investor thinks and also think about their standards from the investor's perspective. So in that way, he can try to persuade the investors and get the funding.
혹시 뭐 저의 이야기에 궁금하신 인베스터가 있으면 언제든지 연락 달라고.
So if you have any questions regarding the investment stories of him, just please contact him separately.
제가 학생들에게 가끔 어떤 이야기를 써야 될지, 어떤 이야기가 좋은 이야기냐는 질문을 많이 받게 됩니다.
So he thinks about what to tell students all the time. What's a good sentence to tell the students all the time?
그때 제가 항상 하는 얘기가 네가 봐서 네 스스로가 봤을 때 이 이야기가 재밌느냐, 흥미가 있느냐 이걸 먼저 자신에게 물어보라고 합니다.
So he will first ask the question to the students is, from your perspective, do you think this is an interesting story? So I will tell the student to think about that.
결국 가장 기본적으로 시작점인 내가 재미없으면 그 누구도 이야기는 재미가 없는 이야기일 게 분명하기 때문입니다.
So ultimately, if the story or the thoughts that the student have, it's not interesting for the student themselves. It will be not interesting for the others as well.
그래서 항상 저는 지금 아까 앞서 질문하신 얘기와 또 같은 얘기가 될 건데 항상 중요한 건 작가가 됐든 감독이 됐든 물론 배우가 됐든 내 이야기에 얼마나 상대가 공감하느냐 여기에 포커스를 두고 전 이야기를 만들어가고 만들어갑니다. 네.
Yeah. So same as the question that the moderator asked just now. Always doesn't matter that if you're an actor or you're a director or you're a writer. The most important part is having that empathy. Whether you can have that empathy between the audience and you.
그 공감이 많은 같이 함께하는 스태프과 배우들의 공감도가 크면 그만큼 만들어진 영화도 그 관객들이 느끼는 공감도가 그만큼 똑같이 커지기 때문입니다.
So as much as you have the empathy in between your viewers, your audience, the movie will also be like a bigger scale in that sense. Yeah.
Okay. 더 디테일한 얘기는 시간 관계상 저한테 이메일로 보내라고 얘기를 했습니다.
Okay. So for more detail, if you want more questions, you can send him an email personally because of time issue right now. Yeah. Thank you.
So we're good for. Yeah, thank you very, very much. So for esteemed panelists, so I think you want to take Q&A from anybody. Can you introduce yourself and quickly go to your question?
Okay, hi. My name is Sean Goh. I'm from Singapore. I used to write a blog about Hong Kong cinema. This question is for Mr. Chan. Your films that you have produced deals with identity, 身份认同, 身份认同. And I resonate with that because I feel that the Singapore Chinese community has also lost identity from foreign forces in Singapore itself. Okay, so that is mainland China. Yes, the Singapore Chinese communities, the identity, the food we eat, the words we speak has been Chinaized. We lost it. We are losing it right now. So to you, I understand that Hong Kong has this issue now. There's this fear of losing the identity. So in terms of stories in future for Hong Kong or even to Southeast Asia filmmakers for the identity aspect, what advice would you like them to put in when they do their filmmaking in terms of short films, installation art, as well as feature? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a songwriter, I'm a screenwriter, but I'm not an artist, so I can speak for other forms of arts. So I talk about film. Okay, some years ago, in the kind of interview or seminar, an audience or the reporter asked me a question. Will Hong Kong movie disappear? Will Hong Kong movie disappear? Because you see, even 10 years ago, someone's told me Hong Kong movie is dead. No one will watch Hong Kong movie ever. So please stop. Please change your career. and I tell you, I was working in the radio station 30 years ago. Same old warning. They're telling me radio is dead. No one will listen to the radio. But now radio is still exists in Hong Kong. It still exists everywhere. Okay. So back to the question I answer. When will Hong Kong movie die? Hong Kong movie will die at the same time there's no Hong Kong people exist. There's ever Hong Kong people, Hong Kong movie will not die. Because we always write our story about the people. We live here, we work here, we smile here, we cry here, we see everything here. So back to the question, what is identity? I just make the movie because I see everything here. So I never worry about it. Okay.
I think I saw the lady on the, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a screenwriting question, actually.
Did you introduce yourself and where you're from?
My name is Zion. I work with Studio Voxel. We're a VFX company, but we've been moving into producing and writing our own films. So I'm relatively new to the screenwriting craft, but I'm learning a lot quickly. So me and my two co-writers have been writing a feature-length film. And by the end of it, we realized that all the supporting characters were way more interesting, and the most boring character was our main character. And you know, finding the right story, I think a lot of the times, not for all movies, but it's the story of your protagonist, right? So I've been really struggling to find out and figure out who our protagonist is supposed to be, and finding who this person is. And I think a lot of different filmmakers have different tools to try and figure out who this person is. I think Robert McKee said, imagine who your character is, how they look like, bring them to the supermarket, and then see what they would buy and ask them why they bought it, or maybe interview your character. So I'm wondering, my question is, do you guys have any advice or tips that a screenwriter can use to figure out who the protagonist is and who they need to be?
Yeah, I think we can learn from many things, like comic, for example. We remember Batman because we remember the protagonist, antagonist, yeah, all of them. You know. Because in my opinion, storytelling is present of what you call humanity, and human is what you call homonarrative. Always tell story. It is why every single life of every human is a story itself, is a drama itself, you know, is a conflict itself. And you can learn from many scriptwriters how they develop upon the protagonist or antagonist. When I bring my student, for example, in some very small area, I can say, if we didn't have discovery, a story, a conflict, a drama, I say, if you tell the bottle, this one, and describe how the development of bottle, and how the content of the bottle, so many conflict and drama about this, only in this artifact. And one day I bring my student in very small village, nothing there. And I just, okay, you collect all the story of children here. One, the cycles of life, important of the children. For example, a children who take care of the many buffalo. Apa nama mengembalakan? Shepherd. Just collect 7 shepherd children in this camp. Yeah, woman, like wanita. Jadi wanita masih kecil ya. It's like 12 years old, 13 years old. Follow the cycles of life. You put the cycles of life in your list. 7. And you interview with them the drama or the conflict or the story that so make them cry, sadness, afraid, like that. A human needs feeling. Then, for example, one of the buffalo ran away and she didn't want back to home because afraid, or someone stolen almond. And then the cycles of life on all the moment of life of the children will become a good story. It's mean in everyday life, you can develop the protagonist and antagonist because every single human being is homonarrative. They can tell a story and they have their own story. You know, that's why it's not depend on the big drama in the society or simple thing. Simple or big, you can develop that. But you also can learn from everywhere. Every screenwriter, how they develop their character or the protagonist and antagonist like that, you know. And make a film is like just children read the comic. The enemy will be changed in every year, a never-ending story. It means if you make a story, it will be very difficult that someone will be received very well. That it means you like a Batman with all enemy every time is changed, yeah? From the clone to the another form of enemy like that. But I think everyday life you can learn from the everyday life. Even in the simple life, you can learn how to develop because human is homonarrative, always tell story, and every single story is the drama itself.
I'm only 1 minute, literally then I did. I think is you and 제가 생각할 때 본인이 시나리오를 쓰면서 모든 씬에 집중해서 그런 것 같아요. 전체 이야기에 대한 흐름이 아니라 한 씬에만 포커스를 두고 그 씬만 집중하다 보니까 그럼 그 씬에서 상황들에 대해서 내용에 더 집중하게 되면 주변 인물들이 더 돋보여요. 주인공이 아닌. 그러니까 전체가 다 평등하게 거기서 그 캐릭터를 만들기 때문에 씬에 집중해서 그런 것 같거든요.
So he did mention that maybe when you are writing, you might be focusing too much on a scene. So he's trying to advise that don't focus too much on a scene. Also, when you're focusing on a scene, everyone becomes equal at one point.
그리고 주인공의 여기에서 더 확실해 보이려면 주인공은 문제를 만드는 사람이 아니라 항상 딜레마가 있어야 되고 문제를 해결하는 사람이 되어야 합니다.
So if you want to make like a main actor to stand out, the main actress should always have a dilemma or maybe try to solve something.
근데 정확치 않게 지금 제가 예상하기에 지금 본인이 쓴 시나리오는 주인공이 뭔가 문제를 만들어가는 인물일 수도 있어요.
So she's trying to assume that maybe right now the main character that you're trying to write is creating a problem, like creating issue, and within that scene.
그러면 주변 인물이 도리어 그 문제를 해결하게 되고 그러면 주변 인물이 더 재밌어지고 돋보이게 되거든요.
Yeah. So if the main actor tries to resolve the problem or the issue and come up with a solution, so the main character will look more interesting and more stand out.
그래서 그런 부분에서 문제를 해결할 때 저는 전체적인 신발신을 다 써요. 심플하게 신발신을.
So when he tries to write the problem solving scene, he writes scene by scene, like in brief. Yeah.
그리고 다 쓰고 나면 이제 그림이 그려질 거예요.
So after writing it all, there will be an image in his head. Yeah.
거기서 주인공의 부족한 부분, 보이지 않는 부분들을 이제 채우고 그 다음에 라이팅을 공격의 시나리오를 쓰면 됩니다.
So after briefing and then when 다시 한번.
그렇게 그 신발신을 짧게 줄거리로 한 줄씩 쓰고 전체가 끝나고 나면 그걸 보고 있으면 이 주인공이 뭐 어느 부분이 부족한지가 보일 거고 그때 그것들의 부족한 부분을 채운 뒤에 제대로 원래 전체적인 시나리오를 쓰면 됩니다.
Okay. So after you write scene by scene, so from the scene by scene, you can try to fill up the parts that are needed for the main character. So from there, you can start writing your screen. Yeah.
Can I say just a few words?
I've got times out. I need to ask.
A few words only. Okay, it's a common mistake, a common problem amongst my students. Okay, I can say a word. New people is always interesting and funny. So when they discover a new side cast, new side character inside your story, you feel very excited, many ideas. But you have not spent enough time and attention to the main characters, just like your father, just like your wife at home, wife and husband at home. Because this story is funny. We lived very long time ago. You think you know everything about your father, your wife, or your husband, but you're not. You know very little about the most intimate one. So I find my student try to write your story about your father and mother first.
Thank you. And maybe the last word, Mr. Lee. Last but not least.
원하는 답은 아닐 수도 있는데 그 프로듀서들도 그 시나리오를 기획 단계에서 여러 가지 버전들을 보게 되는데 일단 조연이라도 재밌는 캐릭터가 있는 것도 다행이다 라는 말씀을 드리고 싶고요. 그리고 또 하나는 뭐냐면 결국에는 그 시나리오가 거의 파이널로 가서 메인 주인공이 있는데 디벨롭이 안 됐어요. 그런 역할을 투자사를 위해서 되게 인지도가 높은 분들이 캐스팅하는 건 더 어렵다. 그런 딜레마에 빠지는 일들이 생각보다는 굉장히 많습니다.
So he's not sure whether this will be your answer. So when the producer does a lot of writing for the non-main character, I'm sorry, I forgot the word right now. So it's also good that you have a story for the non-main character at the moment right now. It's actually this dilemma is actually happen more frequently than you think. So it's not like a dilemma that like it's a very rare thing, but it always happens from what he says just now.
All right. With that, we would like to end our Q&A session.
Thank you.
Anyway, you were success and
We
no
needed
problem.
that,
Fighting.
right?
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah.
So a good story is a good story is a good story. And Mr. Garin Nugroho, Lee Dong-ha, Lee Sang-hoon, and Saville Chan, we all live happily ever after.
Yeah, I would just like to ask Mas Garin, because you have so many students, I expect you will also give ideas for stories to your students. And also, how often do you give stories to other directors? For example, last year, this film Malina, A Murder in 4X, you gave the story, the idea to Muli Surya. So how often does that happen? Because Mas Garin has got a habit of being so observant. He travels all over. He's like an anthropologist, ethnographer. So he's got lots of stories to tell, I assume. Thank you.
Yeah, when I have a good idea, then sometimes I ask to myself, this idea is, if I make this idea as a film, it has become a good quality or not. And then when I read that, the Marlina, must be a woman director, not me. And then I come to Molly and I say, Molly, this story will be change your life. But I always do like that. If I have a story, even for example, for the choreographer or dancer, then I will be looking, this story is like the plant, the trees. What is the sand that the right place for this plant? Sometimes even this plant is from me, my idea, but sometimes it's not belong to me. Then many I give to my student, this story is for you, it is good for you. Several, if I have so many students, and then I say, for example, sometimes I become creative director about design production for women. Now it's become, majority become very famous and become very commercial. Then she asks question to me, why you choose me? You become because I won't accompany you. I'm sure you will become a very popular director. Sometimes only Pun, for example, the last one, a series for the YouTube or for the like OTT like that. Then I put them, why you choose you? I saw you in the Instagram. I saw you several film. And this is the right time you become the director with that kind of the story. It is the right one, not me. This is because I think every single idea sometimes is not belong to me. Like that. Thank you very much.
With that, we would like to conclude our session. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your insightful questions. We want to thank once again our panelists, our distinguished panelists, Mas Garin Nugroho, Mr. Lee Dong-ha, Mr. Lee Sang-hoon, and Mr. Saville Chan. And not forgetting our beautiful